Welcome to Nurse on the Go video with our research series. We're going to present to you today a piece of research that was published in 2012 in the peer-reviewed journal Psychological Medicine. A group of 9 Dutch researchers followed 4,004 people that were between the ages of 65 years of age and 84 years of age. The researchers wanted to know if there was an association between an experience of loneliness, a reported experience of loneliness, and then later on whether there was an increased incidence of mortality. They also wanted to know if there was a difference between men and women in regards to that experience and their increased mortality. By way of research background, they had a look at all of the other research and all of the other studies and the current literature on the topic. Here's a few of their thoughts.
Has been recognised as a clinically important frailty factor in older persons.
So here's what they did. They randomly selected 4,004 Dutch residents. They were aged between 65 and 84 years of age, and they undertook semi-structured interviews 10 years ago. The purpose of those interviews was to establish a baseline. And those sorts of baseline pieces of information that they were seeking were things like marital status, their education, their health, their diet, their exercise tolerance, and they wanted to know key questions about the level of social support that these people have, whether they were socially isolated and whether they were experiencing loneliness. 10 years later, the researchers did it all again. Here are the results. Feelings of loneliness that were reported 10 years ago were associated with an increased risk of mortality in men.
Older men who reported feelings of loneliness were 30% more likely to have died at 10-year follow-up.
The researchers found a strong association between the men who expressed feelings of loneliness at the first interview and increased mortality. And this was found to be significant in men, but that wasn't found to be statistically significant with women. So where to from here? The actual physical or the mental pathway that makes this come about isn't yet well understood. There is a great deal more research that needs to be done here. For example, we have a firm understanding of what health conditions mean in terms of your mortality. We know what cancer means for mortality and heart disease and stroke. But in terms of loneliness and mortality, no. This is groundbreaking research and there's not enough research yet to make firm conclusions. Word about the research methods. This is a large sample group, 4,004 participants. That's robust research and that's a robust sample. So that means that we can take some meaning from these conclusions, given that it's a large sample group. Also, the researchers were able to statistically adjust for health conditions and mortality. So they haven't swayed the research results when someone had a life-limiting condition, for example, and that being the cause for their mortality and not the loneliness. So they've done that research and they've done that statistical adjustment. So that was an excellent part of the research method. However, the authors say that on reflection, when they built the semi-structured interview questionnaires 10 years ago, they could have done more to have a look at the levels of loneliness, and perhaps the questions that they asked might have been a little simple. Also, this is a Western Caucasian society, and its application to other cultures could be arguable. What's important, though, is this research identifies a vulnerable group. As another commentator wrote about this research,
Men who spent a lifetime of dependency on their spouses for instrumental activities of daily living and a social network of friends, family and church members, the death of a spouse can give way to a psychological predicament that they are ill-equipped to confront.
But this isn't a piece that provides direction. But from our point of view, the important lesson from this to be learned is that forewarned is forearmed. Loneliness should be seen as a risk factor, just like obesity and heart disease. purpose of this research study was not about actually offering any solutions. They just wanted to take a snapshot of where 4,004 people were and what that meant for them so that we could have some understanding. Their intent was to drive further research. But for us here at iNightingale, our intent is a little bit different. In future episodes and in more of our premium iNightingale content, we're going to be covering a range of strategies. We're going to be talking about volunteering programs. We're going to be talking to volunteers. We're going to be talking to Volunteers Australia and other bodies that encourage people to get involved. We're going to talk about community groups. We're going to talk about hobbies. We're going to talk about clubs. We're going to talk about neighbourhood programs that are out there, and we're going to talk about friendship enrichment programs, which sound odd, but they can be really great strategies. We'll talk about education opportunities. Just because you're 70 doesn't necessarily mean that it's no time to start learning something new. This won't necessarily be a career opportunity for you, although it might, but that education opportunity might be the first time in your life where you're not raising children, you're not working full time, you're not looking after other people, you're not caring for somebody else, you're not doing something other and have other commitments in your life. And finally, you have time to learn about the thing that you have always wanted to learn about. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about opportunities, and we're going to talk about how people have successfully done that. And we're going to talk about other things like travel. How to travel when you're on your own. How to do things when you're travelling, like going out for dinner if you were on your own. But for this research, 4,004 people, we're taking a snapshot of what they were like, what drove their isolation, and the fact that it drove their mortality, and particularly for men.